And we are live. Hello, WordNerds. We are so happy to be back on the YouTube, going live on a Sunday night. If you haven't been paying much attention, we haven't been here for several weeks. 3 weeks? 6 weeks? How long have we been gone?
What year is it?
Sundays, yes. Emma has had a baby, and that is why we went on hiatus, was to accommodate that. We missed you all terribly. We're very glad to be back. We're going to be doing a workshop tonight, so we're going to have some exercises and all of that. I wanted to kick us off by saying if you haven't seen it yet, please go look at our community post that we put up a couple days ago. So definitely check out that. We didn't want to be silent during all these important things that are going on. We are going to move into the workshop. And as always, as we mentioned in the community post, we always welcome guest vloggers. If you would ever like to be a guest vlogger on the WordNerds, we don't monetize our guest vlogs. So if you ever want to just come on and advertise your YouTube channel, or if you want to talk about your reading, writing, anything, our platform is yours. We would love to have you. And yeah, so we're going to move in now to the workshop. Does anyone have anything they wanted to add before I do that?
Oh, look out for the video Tuesday. We're going to be recommending some specifically Black Right tubers and YouTubers. So that'll be a video going up on Tuesday. So check it out.
Yeah. Hello to people in the comments. Hello to Misty Kate. Hello to Ariel. And yeah, I'm gonna share my screen now. There we go. Descriptions. We're talking all about description writing tonight. For me, description is a crucial part of like every stage of writing. However, I don't personally think really deeply about it until the revisions stage. But I have found that the better I get at descriptions when I'm revising, the better I do when I'm drafting as well. So that's a nice little fun thing that doesn't happen with everything in writing. And so for tonight's workshop, we are going to have a bunch of different exercises. 3 of them will be based on stock photos, or a stock photo that I have found. And then the last one will be using your own work. And the reason we're going to start with stock photos is because I've found personally that it's really easy to think that I've done things really well in my own work if I haven't been kind of working on my description writing beforehand. So we're going to do some exercises, hopefully get your brain thinking that way, if all goes well, the way I hope it will. And then we are going to move into trying to apply those same things that we're doing with this separate photo into our own work. Feel free to ask any questions about prose level, description, writing, all of that in the discussion section, and we will try and answer them when it seems like a good time. If there's like a part in the workshop that fits it. And so we're going to get started. My last preface for all of this is that these are the things that I do. They're the things that work for me personally. I don't feel like I'm bad at writing descriptions. Like I do feel like that's something that I can do well. It's not something that comes super naturally to me in the drafting phase. And so like your mileage may vary with all of this. If that is something that you focus more in the drafting stage, maybe you'll need to adapt this a little bit more to yourself. As always, all the things we talk about are just our processes.
And we'd love to hear from all of you on your process. If you do something completely differently, it's definitely worth mentioning in the comments. And
yes,
we're all just kind of learning together.
Yeah, and let us know. I have 2 questions in the thing. Like, is description one of your writing strengths? And at what point in the process do you think the most about descriptions? And I kind of wanted everyone to answer that. For me, it's probably like the 3rd round of revisions is like a descriptions pass. What do the rest of y'all do?
I'm definitely not somebody who does a lot of descriptions like as I'm writing. It's not something I think about when I'm drafting. So usually, yeah, the 2nd time around for me, when I'm going back to my rough draft is when I will start really thinking about where are the characters, while they're having this conversation, because the conversation is what I really concentrated on through the draft, is the character development. And then I'll try to figure out, do I need to flesh out the setting? And usually the answer is yes, very badly.
I'm a complete opposite. I always do all my description in the first draft, mostly because I'm very description heavy. That's something that I really like focusing on, and I find to be able to fully picture something, picture a scene, picture a person, I have to describe them. So if it's the exact opposite of like, oh, I've been talking with trees for like half a page. Is there a conversation happening? Probably somewhere. I should write that. So
I am definitely more in line with Erin of like it's not something that's forefront in my writing. I think for me the big thing is finding that balance between when I go back in revisions and try to flesh out all of my descriptions, not feel like I usually feel like I have to take it further than like my natural writing voice wants to. Like I don't want to have no descriptions, but I'm not a description heavy writer. So I need more than comes naturally, but I have to be careful about forcing myself to add too much and like over describing to try to compensate for something that's mostly in my head. So
yes. And we had someone mention in the comments also struggling with like balance of it. And that's definitely something we're going to talk about a little bit later on. Let's see if I can move the slide forward. Yay. So what makes a good description? To me, and in like all the commercial fiction I've read, description is a support system for your plot. Which means that when I'm doing the descriptions passive, my revisions process, I'm not explicitly thinking about the plot. For me personally, it's like, I've gotten the plot down. Now I need to figure out where to beef up the descriptions. And kind of like you said, Kelly and Erin, like finding the balance of it and figuring that out. And with Rachel too, like when you are description heavy at the beginning, it's all a trick of like, okay, well, I've got it all down. Now, how do I make it the proper book?
What's important?
Yeah. So I put there too, your mileage may vary, because no prescriptive writing advice here. But 3 things I consider for strong descriptions are setting, character, and mood. And so for every scene, it's kind of crucial that I understand all 3 of these things in order to make a cohesive story that will hopefully have descriptions that will give readers feels at some point. Because isn't that what we all want, just to make people feel things? And so we're gonna click forward. The first one is setting. I always think of this one first. It's kind of like, oh, well, if I know what the stage looks like, then once I put someone in there and I have a plot happening in that place, then I know where to focus. So like I said at the bottom of this slide, like as the storyteller, your words, the words that you choose are like a camera, and you're directing the focus to what your story needs. And for me, it's easier to find what to focus on if I know everything that is there first. A couple things to consider about settings in your work. What setting will create the most or least conflict? And this goes on a book level and a scene level. And what will highlight what I want readers to know about my plot or character. We could probably do a whole workshop on this alone, just like picking the best settings for your scenes and everything. So I'm not going to go too in depth into that. But yeah, so for this first exercise, we're going to focus completely on the setting. So I am wanting you to tell me about this setting and only this setting. I'm going to give you some guided questions to maybe draw your attention to a few things that you might not notice, but we're going to take 3 minutes to write down just as many little things as you can possibly think of about this setting. Feel free to extrapolate in any way you want, but just try and ignore this beautiful person right at the front of it and look at everything behind her. Like, what's going on? What do you know about this place? I'm going to set the timer.
Do I need to make it pretty, or am I just making a list? Like, am I writing it or
list? Just list it right now. We'll make it pretty in exercise 3.
Ooh, nice.
All right. So I'm going to get that timer started. And again, you will hear my disembodied, well, not disembodied because our bodies are here, but you will hear my voice giving some guided questions. Feel free to ignore them if you don't need them. And So everything about this setting, go. What are the floors made of? What about the ceiling? And who do you think made the different pieces of art in this room? What time of day is it? Could you make any guesses as to what time of year it is from the lighting? Do you think it would make it hot or cold in the room? Or is there some sort of air conditioning system that makes that not matter? Is this a castle, or could it be something else? Where are the entrances and exits? If there's some light coming in, why are all the candles in the chandeliers lit? And what do you think is just beyond all the different walls in this room? You've got about 30 seconds left. And time. How's everyone feeling? Did you notice some things? Maybe get some fun ideas?
I really liked the.
When you asked the first question about the floor.
Oh, I must be lagging.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I said when you
how Canadians are.
You said when you asked the question about is it a palace, instantly my brain was like, no, it's not. I'm gonna invent something more interesting and weird and creepy for it to be. So
that was exactly what I thought too when I came up with the question. I was like, oh, but what if it's not?
Nice.
Something horrifying. Yes.
What were you gonna say, Kelly?
Oh, mine went kind of the opposite of like when you asked the question about the floor, my brain just went wood and moved on. Like I don't want to dig that deep into it.
But it might not matter. Like maybe the floors are just wood. Yeah, and so hopefully you'll get a feel for that's what the next couple exercises are also going to be like. You know, taking what's there and then also adding some of your own flair to it.
Megan, I really like when you said, if it's light out, why are the candles lit? Like, that was something that, I mean, that's probably just like a design thing that someone drew in this picture. But like, I love that idea. It was like, what? Like, this makes you think.
It must be.
Yeah. Like, where are the other rooms? Like, what's it attached to? And it's like, oh, that's true. I always do that where I'm like, they are in a ballroom and now they are in a forest that is obviously next to a ballroom, and now they're upstairs. How did they get there? I don't know. There must be stairs somewhere.
I am terrible for that. Like literally every time I hand in a book, my editor is like, okay, now draw me a map Draw you a map because you have no idea where anything is. And she's gone out the first door and gone down the stairs, and then there is no second floor because it's disappeared. And yeah,
That's why you need to write one of those like haunted houses where the rooms are just always different.
then I can just
problem
be
solved.
myself. Yeah. The staircases move, okay? Relax.
Yeah, make it work to your advantage.
Excellent. I like that.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that if I do this for 3 minutes before I start revising or even drafting a scene, it makes a massive difference in what I'm able to do as far as descriptions are concerned in scenes. Because I used to be such an underwriter that I would write a high fantasy and it was like 50,000 words. And that's just not good for a high fantasy. And just taking a few minutes to think about this and then the next things that are coming, it makes a really, really big difference in every stage of drafting. Let us know in the discussion section if there's anything in particular that you liked that you came up with, or if there are any lines that you write that you really like and want to share with other people because you're really hyped about them. Feel free to share them in the discussion section. But we are going to move on to... Ooh, we had a comment from Missy Kate. My most interesting note was the external light is not from the sun, but now I've already changed it.
Interesting.
All right, so now I'm going to move on to character. So a couple things for me. Once I know the setting, it makes the most sense to make sure that I know where the characters are going to be in relation to all these things that I've just figured out. Like, there's no sense getting really, really detailed with the cutlery if they're never going to go next to it. And so things to consider about character in your descriptions. Obviously, your character's experiences should inform their observations. A great book that does this really well is Legend by Marie Lu. That was like the first time I ever really hardcore noticed an author doing that so well with the different character voices, because Day and June are so drastically different, and you can really tell in all of her prose level description, and it's just incredible. So definitely recommend studying that. And then the secondary thing that I always try to consider is what can you infer about their emotional state based on how they look / move / interact with the setting and the story. And a great thing to remember during this is to use all of your characters' senses, consider their internal versus external reactions to the setting that they are placed in. That kind of goes back to what I mentioned before, that we could talk for such a long time about choosing a setting that works really well. But you want to consider the way your character feels about the place that they are at that moment. So we are going to move in. Does anyone have any thoughts on that, actually? Anything they want to share about how they figure out character voice in relation to all of these descriptions and everything, or anything?
It's hard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to check these comments really quick before we move into the next exercise. All right. And so we're going to move right into the next exercise, since you probably still have that picture on the brain. Tell me about this character, this beautiful person in a crown, who's sitting right at the front. So obviously it's impossible to negate all the things that you know about the setting now, but I want you to try and mostly focus on this character, right? As many details as you possibly can about her in just 3 minutes again. And again, it doesn't have to be pretty. It can, if you are especially talented, be pretty. It was not when I did the exercise. And so, yeah, we are going to start the timer for 3 minutes. And again, I'll have some guided questions every like 30 seconds or something. And feel free to ignore them if you hate them. And go. Is this woman a princess or queen? If not, why is she wearing a crown? What is she looking at? What do the materials of her dress feel like? Where did the dress come from? Was it made for her or did it belong to someone else first? Her nails are painted red. Do you think she painted them herself? Is she comfortable here? How can you tell? You've got about 30 seconds left, so I will just leave you to it. And time. How's everyone feeling?
Good.
Less certain than the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more inference involved with a character who you know nothing about than a setting you know nothing about. But it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
This actually made me realize that I describe people very minimally in my stories. And I already kind of knew that, but I'm like, oh, this is way more description than I would usually write about literally anyone. I think I usually have about 2 details or something when I'm describing someone. And it's only the things that are like either really obvious or like relevant to some aspect of the character's personality. Like Minor in Wishes of Ash and Ruin is just like covered in tattoos, and like that really reflects her personality. She wears a leather jacket. Meanwhile, Dana is wearing like oversized sweaters because she likes to be comfortable and she wants to hide a little bit, right? Like, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and I think you definitely don't want to overwhelm yourself with figuring out, well, I have to know I need to know the textiles and every little detail. I need to know where all of their clothes came from, because then you'll never write and you'll never revise. But it is, I think, pretty important to at least take a few minutes to think about the things that matter. For my birthday, my family got me a ticket to that Maggie Stiefvater workshop thing. And in it, she was talking about building characters, and specifically about figuring out what details to tell and why filling out character worksheets can sometimes make it feel like, oh, boom, 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 boom. You know, character likes coffee, character likes dogs, character likes green, put character in green shirt. And how if you really analyze like, oh, well, you know, what's she looking out the window at? What does that tell you? Like, does the look on her face tell you she's comfortable here? Those things can tell you a lot more about like, well, how, if she's not comfortable there, does it reflect in the clothes that she's wearing? Like, did she choose that outfit? Does it seem scratchy to her? And so you pick little details that tell you more about the character and how they're relating to the plot, which I found really interesting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the first things I thought of, actually, when I first saw this picture, was like, she is wearing a ball gown made of mostly tulle and lace, which I can confirm is very itchy. And then also, she has bare legs under her fully tulle skirt. So I'm like, wow, girl, that is not historically accurate and very daring.
Yes. I love it. We've got some publishing. Oh, go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, as soon as somebody said, I think it was Misty Kate, that the light coming in was not from the sun, I was like, oh, she's on like a fancy ass space station. This is what it is. This is sci-fi, and the sun is right there.
Oh,
I don't know. My brain went there immediately.
Oh, I love that.
It makes me think of These Broken Stars, like Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner.
Yeah,
That's why she's wearing all the tulle. It's a future. It's a future ballroom. Yes,
a future where you don't want to be comfortable in any of the materials you're wearing.
Obviously.
We've got people sharing some of their descriptions in the discussion section.
I love these.
Yes,
So
I love them so much. I kind of want all of you to write like short stories and books about these people.
Please do.
But yeah, so we're gonna move on to part 3. For me, this is the big one: mood. So mood is kind of like an Instagram filter, but for your story.
Oh my god.
I love it.
And so the way you describe different things makes it feel like a fully different story or scene. It makes different promises to your reader about what they can expect for what's going to happen later. Yeah, and it can come in a lot of different things. It can come in your like sentence level descriptions. It can come in where you draw the focus. You know, though, like if you put a gun on the mantle, you can assume it's gonna go off in Act 3 sort of thing. For example, in just like different hues of this photo, it evokes different, you know, this one's warmer, this one's more cool, wintry, all the things, you know, you have Instagrams probably.
The WordNerds also have an Instagram. Go follow us on Instagram at WordNerds blog.
Yes. Wow.
We post pictures of books and pets.
And birthdays in the month of May.
Yeah, we got a lot of birthdays.
So I wanted to talk about sentence structure just a little bit. Short clipped sentences can help bring a sense of immediacy to your writing, while longer ones could make it seem, you know, dreamier, more lyrical. And when you know the rules of grammar, you can occasionally break the rules of grammar to cause different senses of whatever you want your readers to feel. Makes me think of the Divergent series, which was one I was reading when I was first getting into writing seriously, which, that was a long time ago. But there was a part in Insurgent, I want to say it was, where she like broke the rules and had Triss say, "I can't think," and each word was on a different line. And my newbie author brain was like, "Oh my God, how did she do it? It was just 3 words." So yeah, you can really tell a lot, and you don't have to, some of this is tied to your author voice as well. Maybe lyrical sentences are very much your thing. I know like former word nerd Erica was very good at this, like really long poetic sentences, and those don't come as naturally to me. But you can make 3 sentences pack it, or 3 words pack as much of a punch as a long sentence. It just depends on the style and the mood that you're going for.
When I first saw the filter thing you did, it gave me a new looking at mood. I thought it was very cool. Just the pictures are cool and all of that. I don't think about mood as much as I probably should, and this gave me a different angle to look at it from. Because like it'd be hard to get this across in words, but that's still kind of the goal.
And I think part of it too is that, especially in the drafting stage, you're trying so hard not to think about what people are going to think about your book that you're like, don't think about it, don't think about it. But it is important, you know, you do need to think about at some point, you know, we hope that people will read our words. What do you want them to feel when they're reading those words?
Yeah, I really liked, I'm the same way as Kelly. Like, I don't think about the mood of my setting, like almost ever, actually. And I would love to do that more often, because that's one of the things the Maggie Stiefvater seminar talked about a lot, was like mood, character, setting. And I was like, oh, I don't think about mood nearly enough. And it's pretty important. So I'd like to.
I think about Maggie Stiefvater's work makes me want to think about it. So
right.
I like what she does.
One of her strong suits, clearly.
Yeah, I had this workshop kind of plotted out with like the character, scene, and mood, and then I watched some of the other workshop, and it was like, oh, mood, yes. I feel validated by the universe, including mood in this. And mood can have different layers of it. Like your authorial voice, the voice that you have all the time, might have a certain feel to it, but it also kind of trickles down and becomes more intentional as you go through, well, what do I want readers to feel with this specific book that I have written? What do I want them to feel in this scene? What do I want them to feel when this character's on the page? I remember seeing a tweet from Rory Powers, I believe it was. It was several months ago now, but there was a screenshot of one sentence and it had like 7 words in it. And Rory had said it had taken hours to come up with the perfect syllabic structure to make that sentence have the power that it needed to have. And I remember just a lot of these things, I just like, oh my gosh, what? And ever since I saw that, it has been a goal of mine to be that intentional with the words that I'm saying when I need them to really pack a punch. Obviously, you don't want to do that with every sentence or you'll never finish. But yeah. So how do you guys decide when it is time to really focus and make your words be really descriptive or really pack a punch?
Like what type of?
Like, how do you know when it is a good time for a more in-depth description versus, okay, well, he just needs to cross the room. There's no need to touch everything in the room while you cross it, you know?
So what stage in the process, or what?
Just how do you tell in your writing? It could be at any.
That's a tough question. It feels like it's an instinct thing mostly, of like one of those things that you get better at because you read a lot and you kind of get a sense of how that should work. I think some of it is also practice of learning that not everything you think is important enough to be on the page. So a lot of it's just like, oh, I thought this, it's a, you know, kind of basic kill your darlings of just balancing out when it makes sense to dig deeper.
Yeah, I think if it's important for, like if it's important for mood, you're like, I really in this chapter want to convey the mood of, you know, this new setting that this character is going into. And obviously, like, starting the book and finishing the book are actually both times I really want to convey what's going on mood wise. And so I'll describe more in the beginning and in the end, and then in intense emotional scenes as well. Not right in the thick of action necessarily, but if it's like a really emotional moment, I'll often take more time to describe so that I can establish a mood for the reader.
I was thinking like, oh, well, I do it when you start to pay more attention to things, but it's like, well, you're always paying attention to something. But like kind of Erin says, like more emotional moments of like, the love interest has green eyes, and then when we're almost about to kiss, it's like, oh my god, their eyes have flecks of gold in them, and I've never noticed they had such long lashes. And etc. there.
Yeah.
Or if like a really tension-filled scene, like there maybe a character's like trying not to tell a secret, and the other character like is touching everything in the room, and they like don't want them to find something or whatever. Like the super focus, I think, is really like, oh, those scenes always get me.
Yeah, I think it's just good to be aware what passages of description do for your pacing, and then figuring out if I need to slow something down. Here's a great time to establish some setting and mood with that setting.
It's interesting though, just because Erin's comment about less so mood on like big action heavy scenes, because I feel like that is where mood comes most naturally to me, even though writing action scenes isn't one of my strong suits, but the like frantic battle thing and like writing kind of shorter sentences and like that feels easier for me than the let's just sit down and have some emotions.
That reminds me of working on revisions with a book that I wrote with Kyra, and there was a scene that I had written as a, oh no, quick, to make them uncomfortable, we have to kiss. Oh no, but we have feelings. That trope. And it was agony writing it because I don't love writing kissing scenes. But I did it. And then in revisions, it didn't make sense for them to be kissing. And so I was trying to take it and make it something more emotionally intimate. And it was so much worse. Like all the little details of a really emotionally intimate scene, you know, just like the placement of the bodies and the feelings of the breaths and the hyper awareness of the surroundings. It took me hours to revise like 300 words of standing close to each other, just figuring out all the mechanics of the scene and everything, since it was going to be like so much more focused in. Like we didn't need this whole big room. We just needed this like 6 foot by 6 foot square. So yeah, that's the bane of my existence, is that one. I'm really proud of it now, but it was awful. So yeah. Sorry, I have like a big thing of notes over here. We had some comments. Missy Kate said, I start with a lot of description when drafting and tend to delete portions that are unnecessary as I revise. And that was one of the things I was going to say is it's a huge part of my process. What was that, Rachel?
Oh, you were like, that's me.
Yeah, a part for me that's hugely important because I do descriptions pass is that I have to have a pass afterwards where I'm reading the whole book again, because when I'm like really deep in the line edits, I can't tell if it's slowing the pacing at all. And so like I have to read through it one more time to make sure that the pacing is okay afterwards and that I haven't slowed something down that shouldn't have been slowed down, you know, because you can get really caught up in how pretty your words sound and then realize later that no, just needed to cross the room. And that's honestly a thing where beta readers comes in really handy as well. I was not very good at figuring out pacing and stuff. And now pacing is one of my stronger suits because I was in pitch wars and I had 2 people who were really invested in helping me get my book ready, who just tore it apart. They were like, this is bad for pacing. This is bad for pacing. Cut this for pacing. And it hurt, but also like, I really needed someone to look at my book and be like, no, the pacing is off and here's how you can fix it. And you can't really get that just on your own. Like you need another set of eyes to help you see that, I think.
Yeah, that's something I remember, like lessons learned from Twilight, funny enough, is that was one of the things, like when I was a baby writer, is I was reading, because her writing is very simple but effective in areas where, like, for example, Bella's like, she runs up the stairs and she like throws her hair up in a messy bun and then comes back down the stairs and sits down for breakfast. Something like that. That was just like, boom, 2 sentences. Whereas I was like making her walk up the stairs and then she looks around her bedroom and then she finds her hairbrush and like very like, newbie writer stuff, right? I'm like, okay, I don't need 15 sentences to describe her walking down the stairs to get breakfast. It just needs to be she moved down the stairs, right? So pacing like that. So reading definitely helped me learn how to base better with description.
Yeah, and knowing the genre that you're writing too, because that doesn't make sense in a vampire romance. But if there's someone in the house and the reader suspects there's someone in the house, yeah, you can take your time going up the stairs. You can
definitely.
take your time rifling through to find the hair tie. And so it all depends on what mood you're going for.
And if you have a reason. Yeah, exactly. Like if you think someone's in your house and you're creeping down the stairs, try not to make any noise, you can have an intense description of that staircase, just because, there's a mood and the pacing is setting that mood.
Did you have something you wanted to say, Rachel?
Oh, it's okay. It's not that important.
Okay. Okay, so I think we will move on to the third exercise, which is set the mood. You've been thinking about all of these things. You've started coming up with your own possible narratives for this photo now that you've set the stage, you know the character at least a little bit. So pick a mood that you want. Something to consider would be the genre, if you're not sure what mood you want. Is it a romance, a fantasy, a historical, a thriller? And obviously there's a lot more you can play with here now, knowing that, you might be throwing a little bit of plot in there too to give you something to write about. You do you. But take your best descriptions from exercises 1 and 2 and see if you can weave the things that you've observed together to create something that evokes the tone that you want. Things to keep in mind: your 5 senses, where do you have your camera focused, and can you play with sentence structure at all? Similes, metaphors, all the things. I'm not going to give you any guided questions during this one because I feel like it's a little bit more involved and I don't want to be distracting you. And also we're going to take 5 minutes to do it. Does anyone have anything that they wanted to say before that?
Nope. My head's already doing the work.
Yeah.
All right. I've got 5 minutes on the clock and go. and time. How did that go for everyone?
Good.
All right, but my cat came in halfway through and started yelling. So
It's like, I am the mood now.
exactly. I mean, she is a mood.
Xander's question about does anyone else try matching the music to the scene you're writing? Right before we did this actually got me thinking about it because I just like set the whole scene to this like big orchestral thing, and now it's like the end of the world and that sun on that spaceship is exploding that she's watching. But
wow.
Oh my god.
to a big musical score.
Hell yeah.
Apocalyptic space station, but
Yeah.
excellent.
Love it.
I also went with sci-fi space station, but I went with some kind of weird political horror where the rich are ridiculously rich and the poor are ridiculously poor because they work in space mines. And then it's like, instead of eat the rich, it will be like throw the rich into the sun. So
Amazing.
Love it. I did a like fantasy mystery court intrigue politics kind of book where the main character is not actually a princess, but so she's helping an organization and she's pretending to be a princess because honestly it was because the candles are lit but the sun's still out that like made me think about it, is that the king is like hoarding magic and they only use it for frivolity, so it's lighting candles and wearing beautiful dresses that make no sense. And so she's there to like infiltrate it and like find I don't know, like glowing magical orb or something and like let people into the castle to assassinate the king.
Yeah,
And then my cat came and yelled at me, so that was as far as I
ruined it
got.
all. So is this why her dress doesn't itch her legs? Is because
Yes.
it's the frivolous magic at work?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Incredible. Did you guys keep your 5 senses in mind? Missy Kate said I didn't get enough senses in.
I did not either.
No, I didn't.
You only need a couple. I mean,
Didn't even think about that.
I did when we were in the setting portion, but not in this portion.
Nice. Yeah, to Xander's point, I am a huge fan of using music to set the mood of the scene and try and get me in the headspace. I like music that I already know very well or that I don't know at all. It can't be music that I know medium well, like I've heard it on the radio a couple times, or else then I'm like, should I learn the words? I kind of like this. Yeah, if I know it really well or not at all, then I enjoy that. I've also really been liking the Crimson Peak. It's that movie with Tom Hiddleston, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been using that soundtrack a lot for the current book that I'm writing.
Yeah, I like soundtracks as well. I listen to a lot while I'm plotting rather than actually writing because if I'm drafting, I really can't be distracted by literally anything. Even like I would sometimes listen to Harry Potter soundtracks, but even that will occasionally get distracting. So it's mostly just rainy mood for me. But when I'm plotting and like writing it out by hand in a notebook, definitely listen to a lot of Two Steps from Hell, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. We are going to be coming up on our last exercise of the night. Cannot believe we've been going for almost an hour already. So definitely if you have anything you want us to discuss about description, writing, sharing our process for it, let us know in the discussion section. For this final part, I said at the beginning that we were going to be doing these with a photo because I do think it's important to get that distance because you focus on things a lot better when it's not something that you're already pretty familiar with. But now I do want to take it to the familiar so that we can hopefully have things that we can get in our own personal like writing lives after this, and that it wasn't just we showed up and did some writing inspiration stuff and now I'm never going to use this again. So yeah, next we are going to do, let's try it on your own work now. And yes, we will leave a little bit of time for questions at the end. If you have any, it's also fine if you guys don't. We are here to talk about whatever you want us to talk about, as long as it's related to writing. So yeah, I now want to wrap up with this final exercise. This can work if you're drafting or revising. Just know if you're drafting, it'll feel a little bit more like the earlier exercises. And if you're revising, it'll be a little bit more like the third exercise, where you're really like digging into details that you've kind of already put in, you know, adding a lot of muscle to bones that you've already created. Either way is totally fine. I hope this will be helpful in the future. And so at the top of the page, before you get started with the actual writing, we're going to take 10 minutes to do this. So at the top of your page, or the top of the document, if you aren't handwriting this, write the big 3 things that you want to keep in mind for this scene, or your book as a whole, or whatever you're doing. Where does this scene take place? What's the setting? Who is in the scene? And what do you want readers to feel when they read this scene? So I am going to give us 10 minutes on the clock. Does anyone have any last minute things, any questions or anything? All right, so this is more word sprint than exercise, but we're going to do it. Let's see if you can come up with any good descriptions through the confines of the plot that you're actually trying to create. And go. and time. How's everyone feeling?
Excited to write, which is weird.
Yay!
It's a good sign.
That was my only goal for tonight, was that hopefully people leave excited to write descriptions. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Let me pull my screen off there. All right. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for participating. I know coming up with this workshop really pushed me to think more deeply about how I'm writing and making sure I'm being very intentional. Because I think we spend so much time thinking about, you know, the character and the world and the plot that by the time we hit the sentence level, it's really easy to be like, oh, this is good enough. And so hopefully that can help you some in the future as you're working to build stronger descriptions. And yeah. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm not seeing any questions. So if you did ask one and I missed it, please re-ask it in the next minute or so. Because we are going to be wrapping things up.
Next week is a write-in, so we will have
it is a write-in, yes.
Lots of time for writing questions then as well.
Oh, yeah. Also, let us know in the in the discussion section, how this last exercise went for you, if you were able to focus a little bit more on descriptions in your writing. I'm going to be putting a link in the description box. That's why I said that, because I was thinking about it. As soon as we go off of air, I will put a link in the description box to that whole slideshow, so you can have it if you want it. Snack time for Kelly.
Ooh.
And yeah, like I mentioned at the very beginning, this is what works for me. If that doesn't work for you, definitely let us know what works for you in the discussion or in the comments if you're watching this after the fact, because there's no one way to write a pretty sentence and everyone's going to do it differently. Yeah, does anyone have any last minute things?
Just that this was great and you put a killer workshop together.
Yeah, thank you so much, Megan.
Absolutely.
It was very fun. Very informative.
Oh, we did have a question from Vanessa. Where do I find the picture you used? I got it from Unsplash. Let me see if I can go back. The Unsplash user was Alice Alinari. I'm putting that in the discussion section right now. We got a shout out for Unsplash earlier from Misty Kate, I think. And Unsplash is my favorite stock footage website when it comes to bookish things. It's so inspiring. It's royalty free. So if you want to use, you know, the photos in an aesthetic or something, you're not required to credit anyone, but I think it's nice to, since, you know, they make really pretty photos.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love it. Highly recommend Unsplash if you're looking for some inspiration, get your creative juices flowing. So yeah, like Kelly said, we will be here next week for a virtual write-in. Please like and subscribe if you like our content and want to be subscribed to it. And yeah, we will be here all weekend next Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Bye.
Bye.